Okay, folks, thank you for joining in, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Masterclass. I hope all of you are having a great day over there. So I'm Zafan. I'm a product expert. I'm a regular over here, a regular trainer here for Masterclass. And welcome to the seventh episode for this year's Masterclass, right? So this year's Masterclass has been going pretty well. We started with how to configure ServiceDesk Plus, the base configurations to get started. And then we went through, we learned about service request management. We learned about incident and problem management. Then we talked about ESM, how you could use ServiceDesk Plus for non-IT purposes as well. And then we learned about asset management, right? And today we're going to see change management, another key ITSM practice that we all, as ITSM practitioners, as professionals, we all adhere to, right? So today we're going to see the capabilities of ServiceDesk Plus that help you reduce the risk that comes with implementing changes, right? So these capabilities would be, how you could customize smaller fields to give in the right information and data, how you could create templates, how you could create a workflow that standardizes and automates several actions, how you could leverage the CMDB and project and release management. So we're going to see all of these capabilities, all of these features, and we're going to learn how all of these features can help you reduce the risk that you have while implementing changes. So we'll start the session. All right, so this would be the agenda for today. So if you had seen the handout, it would have a little more detail. So we'll first start with configuring the change attributes, right? The basic attributes. Then we'll go ahead and talk about the templates, how you could group similar changes together and create a template. And you could use such template to initiate those type of changes. Then we'll see the workflows that drive these changes. We'll talk about the CMDB and how project management and release management helps with the deployment and implementation. Let's head over to the first thing about change management and ServiceDesk Plus. It's configuring the change attributes, right? So these are the basic parameters of the change, right? So these would be the change type, change risk, the reason for change. So where do you configure these smaller parameters, which you would later be using for your change process, right? So I'm going to head over to the ServiceDesk Plus UI. Okay, so you should be able to see ServiceDesk Plus right now, a very familiar UI for you. So over here, if you could follow my cursor on the top right panel, you have the gear icon. Now, when you click on that, it takes you to the admin section, right? Under the admin section, under customization is where you can customize every module of ServiceDesk Plus for these kind of small parameters. And you can see there is an option for change management. Over here, you can customize the change type, CAB, change risk, and all these parameters that we saw. So just click on change type and you have the option to, you could give it a name, a description. You could color code your change if needed, so that in the change list view, you could quickly highlight any high or critical changes with a certain color. You could highlight a certain change that are, that belongs to certain ERP or a specific asset or an infrastructure with a certain color, or you could also color it according to the site of operation. It depends on your organization process. You can also choose to toggle the pre-approval option over here, so that for standard changes like just a regular backups, right? Or it could be a simple update, right? A regular patches that needs to be deployed, security patches. So these can be like standard changes and they needn't go through an approval process. You could just click the toggle over here, and this type of change would be a pre-approved change. So you could see the green shield over here. These are pre-approved, whereas the major and the emergency are not pre-approved changes. You could create change advisory board, right? The CAB over here as well. You can see a lot of the CAB, different CABs are listed. Just click on new CAB over here and you could give it a name. For instance, this could be specific to location, right? So let's say that it's a site in Dubai. And you could choose the members or the technical team from Dubai to be part of this specific cab and list it over here. Now, all of these parameters, such as the change type, the cab, all of these can be fetched while creating a change, right? We'll see how that is done as well. And over here, you could create a new change risk, give it a name and a description, a very simple dialog box over there, and a reason for change, so that a single one-liner, for instance, a backup or a file upgrades, or a patch updates. So these are, you could just categorize these changes with the reason and a closure code. It's very similar to reason, where you could quickly see why a certain change is, or why it's closed, right? Whether it's successful, whether it's failed. So all of these would be help with your metrics while you're creating a report on the number of failed changes and you're drilling down into analysis. These parameters would help you. And the stage and status. Now, the philosophy of how change works in ServiceDesk Plus is it goes through multiple stages, right? So you can see that you have 8 stages listed here. So you can have up to 8 stages in ServiceDesk Plus. Your change process can go up to 8 stages, and it could be these stages, right? It could be submission, planning. You could, of course, change the name of these stages by clicking edit over here, or you could create a new change status, have a name. For instance, we already have a cab stage. Let's say that a technical advisory board is also needed, right? So let's say that's a tab stage, right? So this would fall under the approval stage. So it would fall under the cab. So the stage would still be cab, but you could name it differently. You could have different notifications sending out, and you could have different recipients of those notifications. All of that configured over here. Now, under each stage, you could have various statuses as well. For instance, let's say that that the change request is in the planning stage. Under planning, it could be submitted for review. It could be a rejected plan. It could be a planning in progress, or it could be in the approved status. Similarly, you could add any number of status that deems fit to your organization process by clicking on the add button over here. And finally, change role, another key customization. Change role gives you granular access to all the change stakeholders. For instance, just click on the new change role and you would see the various roles that you could create. For instance, let's say that a new change admin needs to be for data center, right? So any changes to the data center tech would have this specific role, right? So this specific person with the change admin role would be involved in the changes related to the data center. And you could mark the various permissions at each stage that the change admin would have. So since the change admin is an overseeing responsibility, they would have all access permissions, right? I could just click this checkbox. Or you could have a different type of role. For instance, it could just be a normal technician working in the change, and they could just have access to and edit access to the implementation stage. And that technician's manager could have an approve access. So you have a granular access over here. And of course, since change involves multiple departments, you could always have even requesters or end users be part of your change process. If it's a very strictly technician process, you could just check this box, technicians only. All right, so that with this, you could basically have 90% of the customization done. Now, there's one main customization which comes under automation, right? Because it is sort of an automation over here. So which is conflict detection. So you do not want changes, running into issues or going into failures because of lack of resources or because of another major change. So you can create freeze windows by clicking on the conflict detection. So you can create a timeline. For instance, when you create the new freeze window, you could say that, let's say that it's going to be the holiday season. And you could say that this holiday season is applicable. So this freeze window is applicable only for certain services or sites or all changes. So let's say that it's sites. For instance, in the US region, the holiday season is different. whereas in the Middle East region, their holiday season falls around the August or September, around that time. So according to the site, you could change your freeze window, and you could choose which services sites needs through this dialog drop down list over here. And you could apply this freeze window to just releases, or to downtime, or even for change creation. So it would, if you choose change creation in that specific timeline, no new changes would be created. And similarly goes for downtime and release. In that specific timeline, downtime wouldn't be possible, and release would be blocked as well. You could also have conditions. For instance, let's say that it's a holiday season in Dubai, and however, if the change risk is low or normal, only then the change window would be freeze window would be applicable. And of course, you could this is where you basically schedule the window. It's pretty intuitive over there. And the same goes for maintenance as well. On the you have a separate tab for maintenance windows. If you have in the maintenance windows, you have the same configurations that you can do with freeze windows, except you would not be able to choose a change creation, because as it shows in its name itself, during a maintenance time, you wouldn't be able to you can create a new change, but you shouldn't be just releasing and having a downtime. So that is the major difference over here. And now, once you have configured that, so you can see that we've done the basic configurations necessary, right? So you have all the change types in your organization, the risk levels of the organization, the stage and status through which your change would process, the roles that your stakeholders would take, and the operational timings for your change freeze window, the maintenance window, all of those. Okay, so now let's check the customization of templates, right? How we could build the templates. So over here, we have a change template. We'll take a look at form rules and even tasks. So I'm going to head back to ServiceDesk Plus UI. So we'll head to the admin section. It's also available on the left-hand panel, but to make sure that's easy for you all to see, let's head back to the setup screen. And in the setup screen, you would have a separate section for templates, right? So you have templates and forms over here. And you can see a change template over here highlighted. And in the change template, if you're familiar with ServiceDesk Plus previous Masterclass series, we have gone through templates and you could see that usually in ServiceDesk Plus, for all templates, when it comes to templates, it's a very simple drag and drop form, right? So for instance, let me show you one that I have ready over here. We have a bunch of templates listed here, right? So you can see that from the right hand panel, you have various fields that you could just drag and drop it over here, right? So you could, for instance, this is the migration date field, and you have a calendar field over here. If you choose it, it chooses the date and time, and you could just mandate it. You could by just clicking on the checkbox, or you could delete it, right? By just like that. You could also create a new section. For instance, you could you have a change details section over here. You have a CSI section. You have a separate section to calculate the risk assessment as well, right? So all of these are drag and drop. And if you want to create a new field, you could just click on the new icon over the label over here, and you could create a various types of fields. So it could be a single line, it could be multi-line. So we saw that we had a date field, right? So by just dragging and dropping this date and time field, you could create a new field, and it would ask you the field name that would be popping up in the UI, and it would show what are the values that are allowed. For instance, in this case, it'd be Saturday to Sunday, so any day is allowed. So for instance, Saturday, Sundays technicians wouldn't be available, so you could remove Saturday and Sunday, right? And give a quick description so that any technician would know how it is configured or the reason for it, and you could click on save. Now, this is for the submission stage. What on the left-hand panel, you can see the stages. you can create a template, the various information that is needed for each stage as well, right? So on the submission stage, you have the change details being fetched in, the workflow that needs to be associated with this specific template. So for a major change, for a DB upgrade, major change, you could have a specific workflow built for a DB upgrade and you could associate it, right? And you could add the type of change, whether it's a general or an emergency change. So if you notice, all of these, we configured it in the customization, right? The change type, right? The change risk. We can see the change type over here, a major, minor, standard, the change risk, the stage, and the status. All of these were customized in the customization panel, right? The change impact. So all of those values will be fetched and displayed over here. So head over to the planning section, and you can create dedicated fields for that as well. You can pre-populate information. For instance, if you're creating a template for a very major change with, and you know that these are the information that are standard, you could add all those impact details and rollout plans. Now the rollout plans, backout plans, these are built in, right? So that's what it mentioned by predefined sections, meaning you can remove the section, but you cannot remove the description field. So if you have the rollout plan section, it will have a description field in it so that you could add your rollout plan. Now it's a full, it's a rich text editor. So you could add your images, you could have PDFs, you could have a complete plan listed in the description, in the backout plan, and even in the checklist. Now you could see the schedule section is there for the planning. So you could add a schedule, start or an end, and other data that you need to add from the right-hand field section, field list right over here. And you could also add tasks. So these tasks would be hard-coded and it would automatically be assigned to the technicians who are involved in the change. So these tasks are also listed across all stages. So every stage, the task that needs to be done, you could add it directly in the template. Apart from that, you could also add the tasks in the specific section over here called tasks, and you could list it for each stage. For instance, just click on the add task and you could configure it for which stage of the change it needs to be there. So basically you could do it all together in this section, or you could do it stage wise over here, and they would all be listed, consolidated in the task section. The roles that we created over there would again be listed here in the customization section. You could add new roles again. You could create one from here also, apart from the customization section. So this is the same layout that you saw in the customization. You could also add, under the cab section, you could have the various cabs that we created, right? The change advisory boards. All those can be listed over here as well. And finally, the form rules, right? So form rules, we've again gone through this in previous masterclass with incident management, problem, service requests. But a quick, a gist of what form rules is, they essentially make your forms dynamic, right? So this template would be dynamic. By dynamic, I mean that when you add a value to a certain field, you could execute actions on other fields based on the input of that field. For instance, you could have a new rule which says that if the change let's say that the category, let's say if the category belongs to IT infrastructure, right? Then we could set a certain value. So these are the various actions that can happen. It could hide a field, show a field, it could clear field values. So you could set a value to field that the change risk is always going to be medium or high. So you could have multiple actions in this as well, right? So through these, you could basically create a dynamic form so that your long, if your form is very long, it can be actually easier to fill up. And you could execute these form rules during the form load. That is when you're creating a change, or when you're editing a change, right? When it's moving through various stages, when you're adding more information to the change, during that time, you could execute these rules. Or you could also execute these rules when you're submitting the form as well, okay? All right, so I'm not going to save this rule right now. And that's basically how you create and build a template. We'll all see this in action as well, so that it's not too much of just configuration and it just feels a bit abstract. So now we're heading to the third section, which is one of the most important section, the visual workflows that drives these changes, right? So I'm going to head back to the Service Desk Plus UI. So over here, let me show you how a workflow actually looks like. So I'm going to head to the change management module. So finally, we're 20 minutes into the masterclass and now we're getting into the change management module. Well, that's such as masterclass, right? We go very in depth with the configuration and everything. So over here, I'm going to create, or I'll take you through, I'll create a new change, right? I'll create a new change and I'll take you through it. So I've created a new change over here. I'm going to choose the template as a major change, right? So this is the template that we created over there. All that will be listed in this drop down. And the associated workflow is a DB upgrade, right? It's automatically filled in. Now, you can quickly see that there are certain information populated. Let me just add in a user who would be the requester. And let's add the services that would be affected because of this change, right? So it's going to be database. So let's say that the intranet would be affected, and the network would be, let's just keep the intranet alone. The cloud services and the applications would be affected. So these would be the services that are affected. And you could see the risk assessment questionnaire. Now, let's say that that it's going to be a critical change, right? So I'm going to just quickly fill up the risk assessment. Now, this would automatically fill in the change risk for us. This is enabled through field and form rules and custom actions. So this is basically how you make the form dynamic, right? The template dynamic. By just filling in this field is is disabled because it would automatically filled based on the values that I've created in these questionnaire, right? And then let me add the schedule over here. This is a separate section that we created. And let me say that it's going to start on August 30th and it will go up to September 5th. And you could also add the CIs. So I did say that CMDB would be involved in change management, right? And you mentioned that most of you do not involve it. But it's always important to include your CIs because your CMDB are the single source of truth for your IT infrastructure. So add in your CIs directly into the change over here. So let's say that the ERP would be down, okay? And you could also add the various servers or assets that would be involved. The reason for, the reason we say this is a best practice of involving CMDB and your assets is that during a change process, all the stakeholders would have up-to-date information on what assets they're working on, what are the configuration that the asset has, which OS it is running, which version of a patch it is running, right? So you would have complete information right within the change interface, right? All right, so you can add the roles for approvers over here. So I'm going to add a few approvers. And I'll just start the change. So since these are not mandated fields, I'm not going to create one, and I'm just going to click on save. And you could add those roles over here. Now, once I've clicked on save, we'll see the workflow in action, right? So we created this change just to see the workflow, right? So the change has been created now. It will be redirecting to the change. So yeah, so this is the change ticket, right? The change request that we created. Now you could see that automatically the change has pushing us to, is reminding us there is an approval waiting. So before that, let me show you all the details of the change, right? So you can have all the details fetched from the template are listed here in the submission stage. On the left-hand panel, you could see the stage, right? We are at now. The orange is basically shows that it's in progress. And all the details are filled in, pre-populated with the template. And you could see that the change risk is automatically added as critical. This was because of the questionnaire that I filled in, right? And I did add the CIs, right? And so the ERP solution would be an impacted CI. Now you could quickly click on this CI relationship icon, and it would fetch the information from the CMDB, and it would quickly show the relationship map directly to the stakeholders. For instance, let me show you over here. Right. Yeah, so it should be visible to you if I refresh it. And essentially, the relationship map gives you a clean idea of the impacted assets that are depending on that ERP server, right? Let me quickly check this out if it works. Right, so you can see that we just saw the relationship map popping up, and you could this info is fetched directly from the CMDB. Now in this session we'll also go through how to configure a CMDB, how to build your CMDB in ServiceDesk Plus. And when you click on one of these resources, it would actually give you more details as well. We'll go into detail when we're talking about the CMDB, but the idea is that you could actually get information of your CIs, your impacted CIs and your assets directly from the change request. Now, let's take a look at the workflow, right? So on the top side of the screen, you can see the workflow icon, and this visual map is the workflow that is driving this change. Let me zoom it out. You could see the various different shapes and sizes and colors over here. These are various nodes, right? So this green path, this green highlighted line is the path that the change is taking. And we can see there are three, nodes that are, indicating to us that we need an approval right now. So since the change risk is critical, it's asking us an approval. Now, once we given the approval, it would head over to the planning stage, right? We'll see how this workflow goes in action. Now, I'll give the approval over here. You have a separate tab for approvals, and when I click on approve and submit it, it would automatically move to the planning stage, and it would kick in the next set of automated actions, right? So it'll take a few seconds over here. Now, once it's approved, we'll see the various information that is fetched in the planning stage, and we'll see how to configure a workflow from scratch and all the various actions that you could do in this workflow. So let me just refresh it rather than waiting for it to load, since it might sometimes take a few seconds. And once it moves on to the planning stage, we'll again quickly see how to configure a workflow from scratch. I'm gonna head over to the setup screen right now, so that we could see the we could configure the workflow while the change moves on to the planning stage. Let me try and approve it one more time. Right. So yeah, so now the approval has been gone through, and we could see that it's moved to the planning stage. Now in the planning stage, we could see the impact details, the rollout plan, the backout plan. These were added in the template, right? Now let's see where we are at the workflow. Now, when I open the workflow, it shows that there is a separate node. So this is the highlighted portion. So this is the status we're at. So the planning is in progress. So it's asking us to add the rollout and backout plan, and it's waiting for us, waiting for our inputs. So only if we add the rollout and backout plan, ServiceDesk Plus would move the change to the approved status. And then it would move to a CAB approval, right? So let's add the rollout and backout plan. So I'm just going to add a quick sample plan, and I'm going to do the same for the backout plan as well. Okay, so now that I've added it, it would quickly check if all the fields, necessary fields are filled, and it would push the workflow, right? It would you could see that a new approval has been created, and it has pushed the workflow to the CAB stage, right? So how do we actually build all of this? How do we build this workflow? Now let's head over to this admin section, right? So let me reload this so that we can check check it in the admin section, right? So under the admin section, workflows are, it's pretty obvious. It would be sorted under automation. And when I click on workflows, you have multiple you have workflows for every ITSM practice in ServiceDesk Plus, right? So just click on this drop down icon. You can choose the workflow that you want to create. I'll create a change workflow right now, and I'll show you the workflow that was driving our major change earlier, which is our DB upgrade workflow, right? So this is a drag and drop canvas. Over here, you can see all the various nodes that we have created. And you could, when you click on the, when you right click on this canvas, you could add new nodes such as flow nodes, condition nodes, or you could also just click on this top right, on the top right corner, you have this panel where you could just drag and drop these nodes, right? So let me just go through the various nodes over here. So first is the stage node, right? So by just dragging and dropping this node, you could add a stage and the various statuses that it needs to be part of. In this stage, you could also add the if node, the conditional nodes, right? So these would be the if, wait for, and switch. So we saw the wait for node over here, right? So it was waiting for our rollout and backout plan. So when you could just add by just dragging the wait for node over here, choose which which information it needs to wait for. For instance, it could be that the CI involved needs to be certain value, and then it would execute this wait for condition, right? And then when you click on save, it would be added. So it would wait for this. Now, similarly, you have the switch node. The switch node, we used it for the change risk over here. So switch node is a multi-path node, right? So depending on various values in the change risk, it would take different paths. So for instance, if it's a low risk change, it would directly get accepted. If it's a medium risk change, it would send a notification to a stakeholder. If it's a high or a critical change, it would send an approval. So you could see there are 3 paths going on depending on the change risk. So that is how you use switch, right? And then you could, again, to configure it, just drag and drop over here. And you could add the field. For instance, the impact is a field which has multiple values. So you could choose the values that the switch node needs to have. For instance, it could just be the 3 of these, and then you could just map the path for the change. Then comes the most important nodes for the change workflows, which these are the action nodes. So through these, you can execute automated actions, right? So you could execute an approval, just drag and drop it. You could name the node, and you have multiple configurations of approvals. You could just have anyone to approve or majority approve. You have a different set of configurations that you could configure from this drop down. You could choose the recipients who needs to approve this. It could be users or roles, or it could be organization roles. It could be a cab. It could be technician groups. It could be direct users, right? You have various categories of approvers over here. And you could add, you could customize your message over here. You could add variable names, which would fetch information directly from the change request. And you could also have it as an actionable message, right? So by actionable message, it would basically look like it would send this dialog box as an email, so that your approver just can directly click approve from their email. And it would add all the information directly from the change template. And you could also send out notifications. You could do a field update. Field update is basically like form rules, where if it matches a certain conditions, you could have a certain field to be updated as such, right? Or you could also have, you could assign tasks apart from the template. You could also assign tasks over here. Over here, you could add like a conditional task, right? For instance, if it's related to, ISO 27000 compliance issue, you could mention that there are certain more checks that you need to do through these tasks. Then you could have a custom function running. So through custom functions, you could execute actions in other other external applications. You could execute actions in other modules of ServiceDesk Plus as well. So through these, you could create that exact use case that you need, right? So you could script together the exact requirement that you need by adding a custom function. Similarly, you have webhooks to share data between multiple applications beyond ServiceDesk Plus, and a timer. A timer essentially is just a reminder. So it could be used for a notification. It could be used it could be used for an approval. It could be used for a task. It could be used for a download thing that needs to be checked after a certain time. So you can use the approval as such. You could create new approval, and you can customize the actions as well. So you could see that you could choose the duration to be based on a date field or based on conditions. Choose the date and hours, and configure actions. So when the timer is running, you could configure multiple levels of action. And when the timer is running, you could send a notification. This could be an approval reminder. You could share data as a webhook. For instance, you could send the approval through Slack or through MS Teams through the webhook, or you could run a custom function. And you could have multiple levels of these execution as well. And you could also have a configuration on when to stop the timer, which is the abort timer, right? So you can set specific conditions and actions for that as well. So you have a very detailed timer configuration available in the workflow as well. Now, and here's one of the most powerful nodes that we have, which is Zoho Circuit. Now, Zoho Circuit is a single touch. It's a workflow automation, right? It's through that you could execute functions within even your local network applications. You could run database queries. You could run PowerShell scripts in your Windows machines. You could run Active Directory actions. You could do all of these through Zoho Circuit. For instance, you could see the circuit that's displaying on the screen, right? It could back up files. So for instance, you have a standard change, a pre-approved change to back up your system. You could create a Zoho Circuit node, and you could just drag and drop that over here, and it would run this PowerShell engine. So that automatically, but without any manual effort, you could just create the new change. It would run, it would back up automatically, and then it would close the change as well. No human intervention involved. Now, if you would like to know more about Zoho Circuit, which is by in itself a pretty deep, powerful automation tool in ServiceDesk Plus that can be used in more places than just changes alone, just drop us an email, or we'll be happy to help you out with more resources, or get in a one-on-one session with you on how to configure it. Now, finally, you have the branch nodes, which basically forks the path or joins the path. You can see an example of that over here. We can see the approvals being forked over here. So 2 separate approvals going, for one for the IT team, one for the business team. And this path is again joined again over here. So you can have, it needn't just be binary. You could have multiple levels of path, splitting of paths or branching of paths with this. So this is basically of all the actions that you could do with the workflow. And you could see that through these, you could create a huge number of combinations of very powerful, comprehensive, elaborate workflows, right? Complex workflows that spans multiple sites in your global organization, right? And you could control it centrally from one location. Now, you could also, let me quickly show you how to create one. So just click on the new workflow, and let me say that it's a sample workflow for Masterclass, and I'm creating it. Now you could see that you start basically with just 2 stages, the submission and close. You can just drag and drop new stages. You click on drag, you add a planning stage, the various statuses that the change should be part of. And you need to drag the link from this orange port, and you need to connect it to one of the input ports, which is in green color, right? You just drag and drop it. Now there is a path that is created from accepted to planning in progress, right? Similarly, you could also drag from planning in progress to another. Let's say that it's going to be a notification node. Let's say it's a back. I'm just going to choose one of the existing notification, and from the planning in progress, it needs to send a notification. Just drag and drop it to the from the orange port to the green port, and from here send it to the approved port. So now there is a path that is created where a change would come in, it would get accepted, head over to the planning in progress status under planning stage, a notification would be sent to CR, and then it would be approved. So this is the path that I've created. So it's very simple, where you just drag the linkages and connect it to various nodes. All right, so that is the power of workflows. And so, wow, that was a deep session there, right? So we are halfway through our masterclass. We have a lot more to go. So now I'm going to take you through CMDB, right? So I did mention that we'll be talking about configuration management, right? So we'll see how the basics of CMDB in ServiceDesk Plus, the CI types, the relationship types, the sync rules, and business view. Right. So I'm going to head back to this section. And we did see how CMDB fetched the relationships from the changes, right? Let me show you how it actually looks in the CMDB and from where this data is fetched. So head over to the CMDB module, and you have on the left-hand panel, the first option is business views, right? So you could see the various business views, right? So if I click on one of this expanded business view option, you could see the vast, expansive infrastructure relationship map over here. You know what? We all run in large enterprises that span across multiple countries, right? So we do need a single location where you have a visual map of your entire digital infrastructure. So for instance, you could have business views. For instance, this just talks about the ERP service. You could also have different services. For instance, you are running a mail server. So you could have an email service as a separate business view. And anytime you need to check on any configuration information, you could just click on that business view, or have that business view as a separate view in your dashboard, in your private dashboard, so that you could quickly fetch the information. So you could create such elaborate views. So for instance, let me just zoom in over here. You could see for instance, Joyce, this user is using MacBook Air, right? And she is part of the engineering team, right? So you could see the relationships also described on each of this. Now, when I click on one of these, it lists all the other details of the specific CI. For instance, let me click on this ERP solution. On the right hand panel, you could see the location of it, the business impact, and any application that is installed. All of these details can be configured specific to your organization parameters. The associations tabs, it consolidates all the problems, the incidents it was involved in, the changes it was part of, any release or deployments that has been done on the ERP. All of that can be accessed on a consolidated way directly from the CMDB. So as I mentioned, so this is the single source of truth for you. And again, the downtime basically mentions all the downtime history as well. So just click on it and you would get the downtime data, and you could further drill down and analyze it. Now, you could create a new business view by just clicking on this new business view. I can choose a base CI. For instance, let me choose that let's say that it's a POS system, right? Point of sale system, and let's say that it's POS view. And let me click on next. And once I click on it, it would, the base setup is shown, and you could add more and more, CIs to it by just hovering over the CI graphic over here and clicking on the plus icon, and it would show you suggested relationships. For instance, whether this specific CI needs to be connected to an application, or whether it's hosting an application, right? Or of course, you could have custom relationships as well. These are added from the customization menu, and it depends on your organization policies, right? And when I choose, for instance, it's connected to when I choose one of the relationships, it shows up all the other CIs in the drop down list over here. So it's connected to another CI, or I could choose a different category of CIs, and all of these would be listed here for me to just click and add. Once I've added it, this would be added as a graphic over here, and this the dependencies of the added CI would be listed here as well. So it's very intuitive like that, and you could create new business views. So I'm going to discard this view since I do not want any sample views on my instance over here. Now on the left hand panel, you can also rather than just having a visual view, you could have a detailed analysis by clicking on the CIs listed here. For instance, let me choose an Apache instance, and you could see the various instances that we have in Dubai, right? So the data security team has a separate instance, and you could see the associations they have with it, the downtimes, the relationships, all of that are listed here in detail by directly clicking on this. You could add a new relationship and a relationship map on the top panel, and you have a very intuitive layout listed in the CMDB. So how do you configure this? How do you customize it? Head over to your setup again. So we're going to head over to the customization menu, and you have a separate CMDB option listed here, right? So you could see the various CI types, the configuration item types over here. So you could create a new CI type depending on the CI that you need. For instance, let me say that this CI type, would be specific to a new location that is added to your IT operations. So let's say that it's going to be Brazil. And the parent CI would be one of the SQL databases over there. And you could have an API name given this over here so that you could always fetch the information and display it in any of your other monitoring devices or any of your other reporting devices or your analytics. You could fetch that by just adding the API name over here and giving an icon. Now, once you click on save, you have the fields option where you can create any type of field to fetch the exact information needed for that SQL database. For instance, you could add the vendor details, or you could add the technician details who is managing the database in that specific region. And you could have a relationship map, add it over here, and add the sync rules. Now, sync rules is that it automatically syncs the information from any of the assets or the users or any software that is discovered by ServiceDesk Plus to this CI, right? So for instance, let me create a new sync rule. Let's say that this is for Brazil DC. And let's say that this needs to be syncing with any software installed, right? So if ServiceDesk Plus Probe discovers any software in the Brazil DC site, it automatically creates a CI of that software. You could create those actions, or you could map those software installation fields directly to this DC, or you could create a relationship. So let's say that we're going to create a relationship, and the relationship type is that it's let's say that it's custom and and it contains, right, or consists of. You could say that this Apache instance, or it consists of the data center, and it's probably one of the software that is added. So you could configure the field that directly listed over here. The drop-down options weren't relevant over here, but you get the idea that I was trying to convey, right? So you could also delete the CI based on the sync rules. So with that, you could automate the synchronization as ServiceDesk Plus discovers new assets, or if new users, a new team is added into the ServiceDesk Plus, they would be automatically added into CMDB as well. So these are the sync rules that you can configure. Now, you could also have a consolidated list of the sync rules under CMDB customization. So this would list all the sync rules that you configured to various CI types. And that's basically how you get a CMDB up and running, so that you saw the CMDB relationship map that we fetched during a change. That is possible if you have a CMDB up and running with ServiceDesk Plus through the customization menu over here and through the CMDB module. All right, so now we are down to the last section of the masterclass today, which is talking about release management and project management and how that ties in with ServiceDesk Plus, right? So we'll talk about the various, the key features of project management, the resource management, the Gantt chart. Then we'll also talk about the workflows and templates for release management. So I'm going to head over back to ServiceDesk Plus UI. So over here, let me go back to the change that created it all, the example change that I was showing, the DB upgrade, right? So let me open that change. In this change, on the left-hand panel, we see that we were standing at the change advisory board at the approval stage, right? So let me give the approval right now. And we'll head over to the implementation stage. Now, in the implementation stage, that is where we will be using project management, right? This is a very major change, as in we can't implement it by just assigning tasks to various stakeholders. There needs to be a project management approach, right? Oops, so there is 2 levels of approvals listed over here. So let me give the second level of approval as well. Now it's moved on to the implementation stage, right? Oh, sorry, I clicked on the reports module. Yeah, so we're back in the implementation stage of this change. So under associations, now under tasks, you can associate, you could assign tasks, but there are just too many tasks that you can't track it over here, and it could lead to, delays in your change implementation. And that is why we have IT project management module in ServiceDesk Plus. So under association tab, you could actually attach the problems and the change, the incidents that are caused in this change during implementation under the requests caused by change by just clicking on attach or detach, so that the stakeholders have a full view of what's happening. You can also attach a project over here in the section below. So I'm going to attach one of the existing projects that we have for unification of tech stack. And once I associate it, I could directly access the project over here. You could also create a new project. When I click on new project, you would be, the details from the change would be automatically populated. You could add the project members. You could add the actual hours, the cost, all of that is pretty intuitive, and you could add that over here. And this is again a template, right? So you could create this template in customization. I'll show you that in a while. And you could add the project. Now, let's see what project management can do for your change. So I'm going to head over to the project over here. So from the change, if you click on this, the link over here, it would take you to the project. Now, this is the project, right? So this is the summary of the project. You have a quick dashboard of the operation status, how much is overdue, how much is on track, and you have various milestones, tasks. So basically, the approach in ServiceDesk Plus for project management is that various milestones can be created, and under each milestones, you can have multiple tasks. And each of these milestones and tasks can have owners, so that there is complete ownership and accountability at every stage of the change. So head over to the task section, and you could you could add a task. You could, you could assign it to a technician, assign it to owner by clicking on this drop down icon. All the users in ServiceDesk Plus will be listed over here with project management access. And you could choose the priority, you could choose the status, and you could choose the milestone to which it belongs, right? And once you have configured that, you could just click on save. And all of this can be visually managed with the Gantt chart. So just click on the Gantt chart icon on the top of the screen, and you could see that you have a very intuitive, interactive Gantt chart, right? So I'm going to zoom out of this Gantt chart and show it in weeks. So you could see the calendar listed over here, and all the orange bars are the milestones. So we have the migration milestone for 2.5 weeks listed here. And under the migration milestone, if I expand it, you have various tasks, right? And each of these tasks go for certain weeks. And if I hover over it, you can see the schedule date, who the owner is, and when I can just click on more info for getting the complete details. Now, if you think the project needs to be rescheduled, or if there is a delay, or if there is a change of plans, you could simply just drag and drop the timings of this project, and automatically the changes would happen across entire project, which means Chris Robin, who is the owner of this task, would be notified. The change would be reflected in the task. It would be reflected in the project management schedule. It would be reflected in the dashboard. It would be reflected everywhere by just adding, interacting with the Gantt chart over here. Similarly, you could also manage the resources of the chart of your project by clicking on this resource management icon. And you could see again, it's an interactive chart over here. And you could have various tasks listed, and you could just drag and drop it to various project members, right? You could also filter it by unassigned tasks or unscheduled tasks as well. So for instance, if you think that Chris Robin has way too much load, you could just drag and drop this task to Donald, and it would be reflecting everywhere, just like Gantt chart. And that is basically how you could manage your entire change through project, right? Now let's head back to our change, and we'll see how release management plays a role, right? So we're going to move from the implementation stage. Let's say that the implementation is successful. And through this action, I'm going to show you that sometimes you can also manually move the change depending on your circumstances, right? For instance, you never know. And for at those times, you can also manually move it. And of course, you have granular access permissions on who can manually move the status. So now the change would be moved, would head over to the, it's checking for an approval. Let's quickly give an approval, and it would head over to the release stage. Under release stage, you have the release module coming in. So you have a separate section for associating releases as well. Under associations, you could attach an existing release, or you could, you could create one of a new release over there. And once you associate it, all the details similar to project would be fetched from change and added over there. And release has its own workflows too. For instance, it's going to be redirected right now. So you could see the overall layout is very similar to change. So it's not going to be another learning curve for you. So you have various stages: submission, planning, and deployment, training. You could customize the workflow depending on your needs, right? For instance, you needn't have planning and development, or you needn't have training for DB upgrade, right? And you can have roles and other associations listed here as well. Now, you could customize all of this again in the setup section. Under project management, you could customize the various project types, the project status that it would have, the project roles for all the members who would be involved. So under roles, you could create, oops, my Mac is going to be, is having a low battery. So under roles, you could have you could give full control access to the managers, whereas you could give technicians, or milestone owners full control over their specific milestones. You have granular access over there. Similarly, you can also have, you have the same stage and status customization, closure code customization available under release management. You also have release roles specific to project management roles, so that, for global organizations, you have different departments, internal departments. You could have specific access so that they would have very granular control over your ITSM platform, right? And finally, you can also create templates for your project and for your releases too. Now, these templates are very similar to change. The drag and drop fields from the right hand section can just be added to your canvas. You could create new fields with a huge range of options, create new sections, and add in all the details that would be added to the added to the change. Now, this includes even milestones that are pre-populated into the template, tasks that are hard-coded into the template, and the project members who would be involved in the project. you could add that directly in the project template. And the release template is similar as well, same for change too. Just add or click on new release template, and you have the same sections that you saw in in project management, right? Except there are form rules available here as well, so that you could have a dynamic version where you could create, you could set up an automated risk questionnaire like we saw for change. And yeah, that's been it, folks. So I think I'm at the end of the section, and I've covered everything that we have planned today. I hope it was informative for everyone. So do stay on. We do have a test we plan for all of you, a quick test which will, if you pass, which is like 60% of the right answers, if you get it, we would be giving you a certificate of participation as well. So I hope I've been a good teacher or a good trainer over here. Let me give a quick recap before I initiate the test for you. So we saw change attributes. We saw that it could be customized in the admin section, and you could customize change type, closure code, all those. Those would be the base setup. You can also customize. You could also set up conflict detection, right? And you could customize. You could create new templates, which would be a drag and drop canvas. You could create templates for projects and releases too. And you could add roles, and you could add form rules, and you could add various sections for pre-populated sections in various stages of the change. And we saw how powerful the workflows was. We saw the various action nodes, how you could branch the paths, how you could create conditional actions, how you could create conditional nodes, and how you could create wait for nodes, all that in a drag and drop canvas. Finally, we also saw how CMDB can help you minimize the risk, how you could build, business views, how you could, create new CI types, and, assign new relationships and sync those relationships, sync the CMDB as and when ServiceDesk Plus discovers new assets, software, or new users are added into ServiceDesk Plus. Finally, we saw how project management is helpful. We saw the Gantt chart, the resource management chart, and how release management has its own workflow to drive the release process as well. All right, folks, it's been a long session. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. And we also have another masterclass next month as well. So you can, these are pretty standard stuff. You could always, write to us at hello@servicedeskplus.com. You can get more details from the Pitch Stop community, and our support page, servicedeskplus.com/support, has more details on how to reach us, 24, cross 6 around the world, around the year. Right. It's been a great session, and it's been lovely having you all. Thank you. And I'll see you again in another masterclass. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you. Stay safe.